Okay, let's go into the song because it
You
highlights.
really want to go into the song just to hear me?
I do.
Roll my eyes at it, I guess.
All right. Upon first listen of the song, so this is The Weeknd, who's the most popular dominant male pop star of our time. And upon the first 500 listens of the song, appears to be about him falling in love with this woman very deeply. And then recently I was going into the album and some of the concepts behind it, and it occurred to me that he's actually not deeply in love with her, because this album, it's called Thursday, this song is Lonely Star, and it's about this Thursday girl, this girl who offers herself up to him only on Thursdays, and she knows that he's seeing other women. He knows that. That's clear. So she's offering herself up to him. And it's really interesting. He's offering all these things for obvious evolutionary reasons, the jewels, the cars, the house. But he's actually not serious about it. He's offering these things, but it's not genuine. It's not sincere. It's just for short-term fun. And it just highlights, again, we talked about the male infatuation. To circle back to what you were saying earlier about the situation where the man and the woman, they're both confused about what's going on. And the woman here, this is just so symbolic almost of the time that we live in, of women who feel like this is something that they should give without an appropriate vetting process. And the male in the song, The Weeknd, he's just using her for sex and not actually interested in long-term investment. I think that hits on some really important themes. And I'll add one other thing to it as well, to wrap this up, about this trend that I'm seeing that a lot of young women are in this situation, or thinking along the same lines of this female character in the song. It seems to me that a lot of young women in their late teens or early 20s seem to be selecting for more of characteristics that men might select for, of attractiveness, hotness, sexual thrill. And it seems to me, people will give different ages for this, but it seems to be there's some kind of evolutionary switch almost around 25, 26, or maybe even later, 30, 35 for women, where then they start changing their mating strategy towards a guy who could actually be a proper provider and father for their kids. But I also just want to add that in of what you think about a lot of young women in their early 20s who are more selecting for superficial criteria rather than deeper criteria.
Well, they're not only selecting for superficial criteria, but they are failing to understand the rotten deal that they have been handed. Now, life is not fair. There are downsides to being a woman, as there are downsides to being a man. The power dynamic has not favored women. On the other hand, women aren't dying in large numbers on the battlefields of the world either. So there are trade-offs, and we all, by virtue of a lottery, end up male or female. Most of our genomes don't know what they're going to be, and then the sex chromosomes tell them, okay, you're going to live this time in the form of a man or in the form of a woman. And women do not realize that they have effectively been conned, that because they have aspired to the kind of freedom that men have had and the kind of sexual thrill-seeking that men have pursued, they have given up the tremendously valuable thing that they brought to the table that actually did give them a lot of indirect power over the quality of their lives. And I think it's impossible. But if modern women could understand what they got and what they gave up, they would realize how bad a deal it was. I'm not saying that the old way can be resurrected. I'm not saying that it should be resurrected. But the idea that you went from having a deal of a certain quality to a deal of a much lower quality ought to stun you. It ought to stop you in your tracks, and it ought to make you think, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not getting value for what I bring to the table. And yeah, that song, I mean, of course, this is...
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on that. Yeah.
The song is going to, of course, validate everybody's fears. I'm some gray-haired guy shouting, get off my lawn or whatever. But I do think it's a pretty desolate view. And that I think both characters in the song are frankly sad. Right?
Yeah.
You got this guy who clearly can have a different woman every day of the week, and he can afford to shower them with gifts. So he's got his own little harem, I guess. But he doesn't sound like he has love, and he really can't, because a woman who would be capable of delivering a very high quality partnership is not going to put up with, this sleeping with a different woman every night and showering them with houses and cars and all of that. I also think that it's weirdly reflective of the lousy deal that many people are getting. So including this guy, the Weeknd. I assume he's richer than God.
Yeah.
Okay. I assume he can have anything sexually he wants at any time. The number of women who are lined up to get his attention is probably, indefinitely large. But he has somehow been turned into this sort of cartoon where he is putting out this product in which what he's doing is effectively just broadcasting how successful he is, in terms of bedding different women. And the emptiness of it is pretty obvious. I think it speaks to a sort of more general, like, are you really the master of the universe, or are you a little puppet on a string? And yes, you don't have the same money problems that the rest of us do, and you don't have to figure out what you're going to do, for the evening, because that's a problem that solves itself. But it doesn't speak to a life that I would want at all, right?
Yeah, and one point of context that you might not know, since you don't consume this regularly, this album Thursday and this whole trilogy series of mixtapes that he put out in 2011, there's a remarkable amount of self-awareness. So he's showing this, and in other songs, showing the consequences of this being emptiness, loneliness, not actually the thing that he thought he was going to get out of this. He reveals he doesn't actually get it. So this isn't just some plain airheaded endorsement of, oh, look how amazing my life is. This album is actually very openly tragic. So there's a remarkable amount of self-awareness and growth within the music as well. But this core theme that I wanted to get your thoughts on, of like, he's manipulating these evolutionary tactics, right? The cars, the jewels, the houses. That is, in theory, like, you would want that as a woman. You want a man who can provide, who's financially able. But he's using these things, but not actually long-term investing. It's just a manipulation. Yes,
and I mean, the real sad part of it is the human being is a beautifully engineered system for a world we don't live in any longer. And the problem is we've gained a lot of control over aspects of this system and lost track of what it's for and how it works when it's actually firing on all cylinders. One of the ways that it works is there are internally generated rewards that are held away from us until we accomplish something worthy of having them released, right? So if you are a virtuoso violinist, you know that there is a level of play that you are not capable of just simply delivering on command, that every so often You're in the flow and you nail it and you feel that thrill, right? Likewise, for any other person who has achieved greatness in some realm, whether it's an intellectual realm, whether it's sports, doesn't matter, whether it's capturing the heart of the girl of your dreams, which is really the ultimate of these things, frankly. But those internal rewards can be released chemically, right? There are molecules that will cause the dopamine to flood your system and give you a thrill like nothing else. What happens when you get the power to deliver that thing to yourself without accomplishing anything? Well, you stop being preoccupied with the idea of accomplishing things, and you start being preoccupied with where you're going to get your next fix. And so I think that has happened with all of the architecture around sex and romance, where everybody's aware that there's something you can trigger that's really pretty awesome. And so they get very focused on, well, how am I going to trigger that? How long could I possibly wait to have it triggered again? And a total loss of an understanding of why the most powerful reward in the known universe is connected to this very thing. It's about something. It's about a true blending of yourself with another human being for the most important purpose that exists, which is the partnership that allows your lineage to continue into the future. That's a very difficult thing to accomplish. It's a very important thing, and it's very sensitive to how well you do it. So we are a bunch of addicts chasing a high when that high is stealing from us the kinds of motivations and an organizational structure that makes life coherent. And we don't even realize that we're addicts chasing a fix. So it's an absurdity. And if I sound like a stodgy old guy, fine. But I'm trying to tell you something. I'm trying to tell you about you are choosing between different lives that you might lead. And if you could sample those lives, you'd know which ones to pursue and which ones to bypass, but you can't. So that's the problem, is people think that what some of us describe is possible is actually not true or a myth or not as good as it sounds or whatever. But man, if I were your age, I wouldn't whatever it. I would think very carefully about which life I wanted to lead. And then the question is, well, how the heck can you get there?